Welcome. Welcome to a webinar presented to you by Regent University School of Business and Leadership. It is such a joy to have you with us this evening. Thank you for taking time to be with us. This is such an important topic, and I'm so excited we are able to bring this to you tonight. I am Doris Gomez, and I have the great pleasure of serving as the Dean of Regent University School of Business and Leadership when Dr. Wiater, who will moderate the panel for us, shared with me about the idea for this particular webinar and the topic of it. I absolutely said, yes, this is what we need, because, you know, I don't know if you remember way back, March, February, right? We thought, oh, this whole COVID thing, we're gonna all be good and stay home for 2 weeks, and this thing is going to be over before we know it. Well, it's 5 months later, and we are still in the thick of it. So this has turned out to be quite a marathon. And I think we need each other. We need to know more than ever, you know, how we as leaders, those that are entrusted with the care and leadership of other people, can help through this difficult times. And so when Dr. Wiater shared with me about the leadership coaching webinar about developing agility, resilience, and empathy, I said, yes, I need it. And I'm sure there are a few others that need it too. So thank you so much for joining us today. This is, I want to get right to it. So I don't want to spend much time with a whole lot of other introductions. Please know that we so appreciate you. I do want to introduce our amazing panel moderator and really author behind that webinar, and that's Dr. Diane Wiater. Dr. Diane Wiater, I'm sure you all have read her bio. I hope you did, at least. Dr. Wiater is truly a coach's coach. She trains leaders. And she trains coaches, and you know, she has over 35 years of experience in that field, has worked for major corporations. I have the great privilege of actually calling her my friend, and I tell it everybody that is willing to listen. Dr. Wiater is one of the reasons besides God that I am actually at Regent University. She's an amazing colleague, an amazing friend, and I just trust her with my life, literally. So I know you will be in wonderful hands. So before I hand it over to you, Dr. Wiater, just allow me to open in a word of prayer, and then it's all yours, okay? Well, Father, we thank you. Father, we thank you for this evening. Father, we thank you for these amazing panelists that you've called together for this evening and for this night. Father, I pray that it will be an encouragement to all that listen here and with us tonight. Father, be with the technology, I pray. Help us all as we are streaming and Zooming from home, and be with our audience, Father, as they listen from their cell phones, their iPods, their computers. Father, I pray that it will be an absolute blessing to them as well. In Jesus' name I pray. Dr. Wiater, it is all yours. I will be back towards the end.
Thank you, Dr. Gomez, and thank you for that introduction, that welcome. It's a privilege for me to be a part of influencing the lives of those who are part of Regent University, and tonight this is part of that. We continue that influence as we just bring together a panelist of experts. These folks have been working in the field. They are touching other leaders, influencing them, helping to develop them, raising them up. And this is a critical time, I feel. If I've heard one conversation, literally I'm involved in numerous conversations every day about leader development. And I believe coaching is part of a solution for that. And so do they. So let me introduce them to you, and I'll let them, as I introduce them, say a word about themselves as well. Dr. Kelly Whelan, who is a strategist, an executive coach, and also a Gallup Strengths certified coach. Welcome, Dr. Whelan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Dr. Wiater. Yes, I'm Dr. Kelly Whelan. I am a leader and team development strategist. I help leaders and teams. I give them permission to lead so they can walk in their purpose and walk with confidence in that purpose. So thank you.
Thank you. And welcome to Dr. Blanche Wallace. Dr. Wallace is an expert, and really one of the connections that we have is very early. She was a pioneer in connecting emotional intelligence with coaching and with leaders and coaching leaders. So Dr. Wallace is a leader and a corporate change agent and an emotional intelligence expert. Welcome, Dr. Wallace.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. And I am Dr. Wallace, and I'm an emotional intelligence research scientist. And the body of my work is designed to help leaders to lead better, build stronger teams, and improve organizational cultures.
Thank you. Thank you. And our third panelist is Dr. Anthony Perdue, who's an emotional intelligence leader. And he's certified in emotional intelligence, but one of the things that I've really seen with Dr. Perdue over the last several encounters is how much he is working with leader awareness and also in the area of psychology with leaders as well. So welcome, Dr. Perdue.
Thank you, Dr. Wiater. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, my name is Dr. Anthony Perdue. I'm a leadership development trainer and coach. I love working with leaders around emotional intelligence and particularly how it morphs into well-being. Right now is an important time to monitor and improve our spiritual, our mental and emotional well-being, particularly with COVID and the challenges we're having. So the coaching that I do, the training, the leadership development is what I love right now.
Well, welcome, folks, and thank you, the three of you, for being here this evening. Coaching is well, before we get to here, let me just let you know as the participants that you will not have access to your audio or video throughout, but you do have access to the chat function. And so if you have questions, we will get to those. We have a couple questions that we've kind of set to answer, and then we do want to get to your questions as well. So if you type those into the chat box, we'll be able to see those and be able to select some of them and pull them out. And that part is going to happen a little later. I'll be watching that chat box though, and so will Dr. Gomez be helping me with that a little bit. So coaching is more than a $2 billion a year annual industry and profession. Companies are spending a lot of money on coaching, and there's good reason, because it works. We're learning that it really does help the leaders, it develops them. Leadership coaching as a profession is roughly about 30 years old. And as such, we know that some of you may not really fully know what coaching is or be familiar with it. Like you've heard about coaching but may not fully understand that piece of it. So we're going to start here and just say, what is coaching? What is coaching? Let us talk about that for just a few minutes.
Yeah, so I'll start. So coaching to me is really a relationship. In fact, I would say coaching is a trusted relationship between the coach and the client, where the coach is helping that client to become their best self. In other words, to self-actualize or to meet a vision and goals for themselves that they may not be able to do on their own. And that self-actualization or those goals can be in leadership coaching. It could be in executive or career coaching. It could be in life coaching, wellness or well-being coaching. So any perhaps 360-degree view of your life, whether it be personal or professional, a coach can help you along the way, particularly if they are a trusted advisor in a relationship.
I totally agree, Anthony. And for me, coaching is the outward demonstration of an inner discipline and passion to facilitate the growth of others. Coaching is more than one-dimensional, and I think it's also important to understand what coaching is not. Coaching is not an opportunity to reprimand or discipline. Coaching is not an opportunity to manipulate or to control others. Coaching, as Dr. Perdue stated, coaching is a trusting relationship that demonstrates mutual respect.
Yeah, and I would agree. I concur with both of you, both of my colleagues. And coaching, it's interesting because it is so misunderstood. And yes, it's been around for 30 years. But as the body of research in coaching grows, we are discovering what the knowledge, skills, abilities of a coach must demonstrate, as well as uncovering the benefits of coaching. So if we were to take just a high view of what coaching consists of, it's what's the challenge, what's the issue maybe that you're having. You're defining a goal, you're bringing that into the session, you're creating an action plan with a coach, you're perhaps asking for accountability around that action plan. You're going to take that action, you're going to evaluate, and then you may repeat the process depending. But coaching really happens in this sacred space where the client is entering, yes, into this relationship, and there is going to be powerful questions that are going to be asked. There's going to be deep global listening from your coach as a way to help you on your way to create and, not just create the goal, but you want to hit your mark, because I think leadership is all about, yes, we need to have these goals. So how are we going to hit our mark? And so many times we need somebody to partner with us to help us with that.
Yeah, I think these are key points in this. When we start talking about that partnership and we're talking about that trust, which is a huge component in the coaching relationship. I think you were going to go ahead and say something. Please go ahead.
I was just going to add that it's really important to understand that coaching is forward focused. Sometimes clients kind of misunderstand the role of the coach and confuse coaching with teaching, with training, with counseling. And while they use the facilitator client type format, coaching, because it is a partnership and it is focused on the client and helping the client to unearth or tap into their hidden potential and create awareness. The key to it, the real power of coaching, is the fact that it is future forward. So when a client identifies a problem or a goal, then we implement tools to help them to move forward, to help them to understand that this is where you are currently, but this is not where you have to stay.
Yeah.
I'd also like to add, many of my clients are not Christian, and that's just fine. But when I do have a client who comes in and I know they're Christian or they've witnessed during the session, for me, bringing Jesus into that conversation just could be what that client needs, because there's so many times that leaders just need to understand not only whose they are, but who they are. And that's where we lean into, what is your calling, and really working through that with a client.
I think a couple of you started to touch on this as we were talking about that what is coaching piece, and I want to swing around, if you don't mind, one or two of you hit what the difference is between coaching and mentoring. But let's move into talking a little bit about what the benefits and the value of coaching is for the client, both as the individual, the team, the organization, those pieces there.
There are a myriad of benefits for the individual, such as self-awareness. This is the cornerstone. Self-awareness, to become more attuned to who they are and answering that question, increased self-confidence, increased interpersonal effectiveness. And another key benefit is this concept of work-life balance. So I think that those are some of the key benefits to the individual.
Yeah.
I would agree as well. Because
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I would agree. I'd actually like a double click on, if you will, on self-awareness. So self-awareness actually is probably one of the most challenging aspects of when the higher you get, the more difficult it is sometimes to understand and become more self-aware. In fact, there was a coaching report that was done that said out of 400 CEOs, self-awareness was the number one challenge for CEOs by far. It was, I think, reported up to almost 80% of the CEOs as their number one coaching challenge. And so self-awareness, whether it be understanding your key values, your core values, self-awareness, understanding your vision or mission, even your core ideology, which is the combination of the three of those, the vision, the mission, and your values, as well as emotional self-awareness. And that becomes very important, particularly in an environment like COVID-19 or in our current environment where it's very challenging, because sometimes, people catch feelings. We catch not just positive feelings, but also negative feelings. So if you are a leader and you aren't aware that you are giving off, different types of emotions that are negative, that could go towards your followers. So that self-awareness that a coach can help at an individual level is very important.
In that sacred space that I mentioned earlier, this is where the leader is the most important person in the room. And when we think about leaders, we think about how often does that happen? So when you enter into a coaching engagement, you are the most important person in the room. And so therefore you have the permission to bring your whole self into that coaching engagement. And so, we do know that based on research that there is increased return on investment for all stakeholders. We do know that there's increased profitability, productivity, performance, relationships that we touched on. We have better relationships, and that filters out into all our relationships, not just within your leadership. And so we know that based on research, people are more positive. We know that they are encouraged more. We know that they have increased confidence. We also know that through coaching, like with teams, we have the ability to really collaborate and have more unified teams. We know that through coaching, we can really take a look at our culture. And through coaching, we can establish this learning engine. So a learning culture throughout, which is so impactful for everybody within that organization.
Exactly. And I think that the key measure of leader effectiveness is how well the leader leads himself. And as we're looking at it from an organizational level, coaching allows a leader to form a more acute perspective from the top down. If a leader is able to become more socially aware of who he or she is, their behaviors, their motives, opportunities for development, then the premise is that the positive changes in the leader will filter down and positively impact the culture of the entire organization.
Yeah,
Who doesn't want that?
Yeah, one last point, and that's just around the organization, particularly the teams. Employee engagement, for many of you leaders out there, you may have noticed that with all of this, that employee engagement has dipped. And that's really one of those things that's tied to emotional intelligence, to get someone to be engaged during a time when they're very anxious or where they're having challenges. And so as a leader with coaching actually can benefit and help employees to be more engaged by helping them to focus on areas that are more growth oriented, more forward looking, more focused on understanding, on empathizing, so that we can understand and listen to what's going on in their lives, so that they may be able to, just kind of express themselves and be able to become more engaged. So employee engagement is another major area of benefit within coaching.
Yeah, one of the places that coaching was developed, it came from two different spaces. One of that was psychology, positive psychology. The other was organizational behavior in performance improvement. So I think that's another whole category when you start talking about the organization and the individual, is that performance improvement space where coaching really brings the value. And we're not just talking about coaching improvement for the poor performer. We're talking about coaching improvement for all performers, for those who are excelling, those who want to excel, every range of employee. And I think Dr. Wallace said as she opened her comments that, coaching is misunderstood, and it's not just for reprimand. It's absolutely not, because the space where you're talking about improving performance, everybody can improve their performance, and I think everybody wants to improve their performance. So that's another benefit, if you will, for the organization and the individuals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's just keep rolling as we go and talk about how coaching is used as a leader development tool. How is that?
Well, when I think of leader development, I think of next steps. So first we need to understand that development is not training. So training is important. It's important for us to have skills and abilities and whatnot. But you need to take what you've learned and really put next steps and action plans behind that. So if you do that, then it is development. And so the value of coaching is found on so many levels. When leaders and teams begin to really formulate answers to questions, then they can begin to really look at what needs to be developed. So a question might be, what does our future world need from me as a leader, from my team, or my organization? That alone should have a lot of dialogue around that question. Perhaps, what do I need to learn or implement in order to rise into all that I'm called to be? Again, that takes that self-reflection, self-awareness. What do I need to learn or implement, to use the talents and the strengths that I have been given and that are within me? And then we can look at assessments as well. And when a coach offers a client an assessment, then we can look at that assessment and have a direction as well into what needs to be developed.
Yeah, I quite agree, Dr. Whelan. And you have listed a number of assessments and tools that are available to a coach to help a leader. But it's really important to keep in mind that leadership is primarily about relationship. And coaching is a process that helps a leader to more effectively manage key relationships, to be more attuned to the individual workforce, to be more attuned to how he or she is relating to their team members and to the organization overall. Dr. Perdue mentioned the fact that leaders are able to influence the organizations based on the type of emotion that they are emitting. But unfortunately, a lot of the times, because the leader's focus is upward and outward, more toward board members and stakeholders, they kind of forget about the talent, their human asset. And so coaching helps to refocus their perspective and really key in on what's most important. Because the research lets us know that the largest business expense that organizations have is talent management, over 70% of their expenses. So it is very important that you focus on your most valuable asset. So coaching helps to bring that to the forefront of the leader's mind so that he or she becomes more conscious about how they're engaging and the impact of their engagement with their teams and with their organizations.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, Dr. Wallace. The other thing to think about, I kind of go back to the question of leadership and development. Like, so what is development? There's two tracks, and this is according to the Center for Creative Leadership of, let's say, leadership development. One is horizontal leadership development, and the other is around vertical leadership development. So when you think about horizontal, you think more about, communication, let's say skills in management, results and things of that nature, things that we associate with IQ. When we think about vertical development, we start thinking about things that align with with values, the development of character. And we all know that, to get to a certain level of leadership, if you don't have the character, it won't allow you to stay there. So a leader has to develop in both horizontal skills as well as vertical skills. And I would submit that coaching is because of that trusted relationship. Joseph Umidi and Tony Stoltzfus talks about coaching from the heart, and the relationship that we have with our clients allows for that connection with the heart, because at the end of the day, the heart is what helps with vertical leadership development. It helps to develop that character in concert with the head and the spirit, the heart, the head, the spirit, to be able to work together for that transformation. So I think leadership development and actually coaching can help connect the heart to develop that vertical leadership in a leader, especially as the higher they get, to develop more of that character, to develop more of those values, to develop clarity of their purpose and their mission and their core ideology.
I quite agree with that. And we know that coaching allows the coach to connect with the heart of the heart of the client being the client's personalities, behavior, traits, skills. Okay, so as we lead the leader through the coaching process and we engage them in emotional intelligence competencies, this is what allows the leader to then connect with the heart of the organization. Once that happens, then real change happens. And real change happens from the inside out.
Yeah. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about, leader development from a strengths approach. And so, we talk about how, emotional intelligence is super imperative for leaders. And when we know that all that money that Dr. Wallace talked about with talent acquisitions and whatnot, when we think about that, and we think about who are we positioning at our talent table, and how can we develop these people so they can then get on board with the vision that the senior leader has and really produce. And so they're going to produce when they are walking in their strengths, walking in those gifts, are able to come as they are in a role where they want to be, not where they have to be. And so when somebody is walking in their strengths, they're going to show up. They're going to show up as their authentic self and do the work.
And then one last thing, I think in Dr. Whelan, you astutely talked about strengths. And so there's strengths from, strengths finder perspective or competency strengths, but there's also character strengths. And so I think part of exactly what we do as coaches is we not only help create awareness of those strengths, but in an organization, it's important to have leaders that focus and that reflect the culture of the organization. A culture of an organization is just the way we do things around here. It's the patterns of behavior. A lot of times that's created from the founders through the values that's created within the organization, through the purpose and mission of that organization, to where they're trying to go in that vision. So the point here is that whether it's competency development, in skills competencies like Dr. Whelan talked about with strengths, or character development, or even emotional strengths, to be able to align that with the mission, the vision, the values, and the culture of an organization is part of a job as a coach as well. It's very important.
Exactly. And it goes back to that fundamental question that we challenge the leader with. Who are you? When we challenge them to reflect, to pause, and to consider the impact of the decisions that they made, which are driven by the values that they espouse to, then it becomes clear to develop and align your mission, your vision with your values, and then to share, then to create a team that espouses to your values, and everybody is on board, undergirding the vision and the mission collectively.
Yeah, and that can be broken down. I mean, we can have those same things, overall, organizationally, and then break it down into our divisions, into our departments, into our teams. So it's not uncommon for teams to have, their team charter, their team values, the vision of the team.
Yeah, this is exactly what we're talking about, is really this space where as coaches, we really come alongside and partner with our clients in becoming their best selves. And these are really these specific things. I mentioned earlier when I was talking that I have these conversations, and we all do, those of us in leadership development, we have these conversations with what the need is. And where this webinar was birthed was really out of hearing some things like, leaders need more agility, leaders need to be more resilient, those types of things that we've been hearing. Leaders, I think in some cases, many over these last several months have become discouraged. I think they may be even experiencing some anxiety themselves, and that place of need for them, and particularly in these things that we're talking about, again, that agility, that resilience, and how does coaching, first let's talk about what these things are and how does coaching come into play as really being able to, I don't want to say combat that, but really assist the leader in overcoming that, and even maybe even just leveraging what they have to go past those things so that they're not the obstacles and barriers that they become.
You're right. Our current culture is being bombarded by environmental turbulence. And honestly speaking, a lot of leaders are afraid. Leaders are afraid, team members are afraid, individuals are afraid. And so one of the things that I like to associate with agility, the ability to think and to decide quickly, is also emotional agility. If you are stalled by fear, that's going to cause you not to be able to respond as quickly as the situation warrants, or to make the most appropriate decisions. So I think a good starting point is for a leader to step back and to identify what he or she may be feeling emotionally, and to ask the question, am I really able to lead my team effectively at this time? Do I have the emotional strength? Once you determine the answer to that question, then you can go forward. Yes, I have the emotional strength. So then I scan the environment, and I identify how the COVID pandemic has impacted my organization. And then I connect with my people and identify what are the people's needs. Because remember, the top 4 needs of of our workers, of our talent, is not so much the money, but workers want to know that you care about me and that I matter. And so we talk about being empathetic, but we also need leaders who are compassionate. And compassion takes empathy to another level, because while empathy is the ability to relate to how someone's feeling, compassion consists of performing acts that with a desire to relieve distress, to relieve pain. And so it's important for a leader to first understand, where am I? Yes, I have the emotional strength to lead the charge, or no, I don't. And we have to be honest with ourselves. If you don't, then first of all, you have to get yourself together. You have to build your resilience. You have to build your ability to bounce back in order to lead effectively.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to ask ourselves as leaders, are we in, preservation mode? Are we crippled and stuck? Are we maintaining through COVID? Is our foot on the brake, or are we really leaning into the curve and really, moving forward? And so, when we think about agility, we think about, are we creating speed? And within that speed, for organizations, we need to think about, how are we serving our people within, but then how are we also looking at our external partners? And when we think about agility and we think about the overarching organization, so many times organizations, yes, are agile, but we have to ask ourselves, does everybody in the organization need to be agile? Because if we look at, for instance, let's look at your accounting department. Do they really need to be agile? Well, the answer is probably no. We want them to be stable. We want them to be on point with what they're doing. That doesn't necessarily mean that they need to do it with speed. And so I think it's important for organizations to really be looking at, where can we be agile? Where does it make sense to be agile? And then move from there.
Yeah, and I'll say, and that's great, Dr. Whelan. I would say that taking a step back for a second, looking at this lens through the focus of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So if you've seen the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's these kind of baseline fundamental needs that we all have. The first is physiological and our safety. And, it kind of goes up from there with belonging and those relationships that we build, self-confidence, self-esteem. And then the top of that pyramid is around self-actualization. And that's where we get into our goals and our vision and really becoming our future self. As leaders, the majority of the time that we should be spending is around those goals, around that self-actualization, around self-awareness. But the challenge is, and there's a gentleman by the name of John Hughes that coined this phrase, there's the COVID gap. We have to focus on our physiological needs around being, food, water, shelter, and safety, many of us. And so, it's hard to focus as a leader sometimes on the top of the pyramid. And it's particularly hard when you have employees or people or followers that may not be in a good enough or good position as you are, perhaps financially, perhaps from a safety perspective. So one of the ways that I believe that, we can help is to empathize. Empathy can unlock the door to gratitude. Gratitude really talks, especially in Philippians 4, talks about, be anxious for nothing, but in everything give, everything by prayer and thanksgiving, so it's really something that I think as leaders should really focus around doing, and coaching can help to unlock that by helping to focus on the top part of the pyramid, by helping to focus on that self-actualization, that emotional self-awareness, as well as looking at ways to become more empathetic, whether it's through listening, whether it's having a better understanding and concern for the folks that you lead. But really focusing on that empathy can help unlock the door to gratitude, which can also reduce some of that anxiousness and anxiety.
I agree,
Yeah.
because the coaching brings a objective dimension that allows the leader to exhale, to catch their breath in a safe space, to understand that it's okay not to have all of the answers, but together we can collaborate and figure it out.
When I think about resilience in leadership, I take myself back to Hurricane Irma. I live in Florida, and we had a Hurricane Irma Category 4 hurricane come through. And so I remember looking out my front door and looking at the palm trees standing tall, and they were swaying in the wind. And then I was looking at all the pine trees, the oak trees, and how they were just snapping across my yard. And it just brought kind of a thought process to me of, why is it that the palm tree, which has a very short root system, is not impacted the way these big sprawling trees are, which you would think, they have big, deep roots. And so, it brings me back to thinking about leaders, and why is it that some leaders can stand tall through COVID and are able to pivot, they're resilient, they are agile, and then other leaders are not. And I think it's really important for us to, have that self-awareness about ourselves, and, like my colleague said, of others. And when we think about our businesses and being resilient, Gallup has 4 different areas that they claim we should be really looking at. And the first one is to reimagine the customer experience. What does that look like? To reshape our culture. So we need to really look at our cultures and think about, what is our business culture currently? And we talked about that. And how is that changing because of COVID? What is our mission, vision, values, that we talked about? Refreshing the leadership development. And so we talk about that through coaching, and really, how are we looking at our leaders, and how do they need to be developed? Because as a conversation with Dr. Perdue and I had not too long ago, it's like leaders are going to show up their authentic self during a crisis. So are we proud of how we're showing up, or do we need some development to take place? And then the last one that Gallup suggests is really reigniting our workforce. And so how are we aligning our roles with strengths, and how are we becoming proficient through that? And then I'd love to go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
Oh, go ahead, because I'm going to move on to empathy. So go ahead on that one.
No, I was actually going to talk about how all 3 of these are measurable and accessible through
Yes.
the UI 2.0 assessment from multi-health systems, but I'll table that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I think that's great. I think that leaders need to understand that we can measure these things. When it comes to resilience, I have an assessment. It's a 10-question assessment. So that too is an option, and we can look at that from an organizational level. Again, we can bring it down to departments, divisions, as well as teams, and see, how are your people doing, and what are they truly feeling. And so when we think about, that empathy, how are you being empathetic? Do you even know if you are empathetic? Because I know for myself, until I started really through Clifton Strengths, empathy is one of, if you're unfamiliar with Clifton Strengths, there's 34 themes. And so we typically operate within our top 5 or 10. And so empathy is one of those strengths. And for me, now I said 1 through 34, I want you to listen closely. My empathy is number 30. And so I remember looking at that and thinking, oh my goodness, that was certainly some self-awareness that I had for myself when I looked at that. And I really had to think about, am I being empathetic? And so if I'm not feeling that I am strong in empathy within that strength within me, what do I need to do? That means I need to really recognize how I am communicating with people. And that could be as simple as a text message. That could be as simple as an email. That could be a phone conversation. What are my words saying? Because our words carry weight. So if you're not asking your people how they are and really meaning it, as well as listening, you really need to think about your empathy and how that is impacting probably negatively if you are not showing empathy.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. We're getting some messages in the chat that are asking, what about burnout? What about if I don't feel emotionally strong? What if I'm out of balance? What if I'm stuck? I think these all things may go into a category of, is it too late? Or what do you do when you become aware of these things in the coach, and not even as prior to coaching, but as a leader? What do we do?
Not too late. Never too late to bring your best. Never too late to reach out to a coach. Never too late to say, you know what, I think I need some help, and raise your hand. Never too late to say that I want to be better for my people. I want to be better for my family. I want to be better for my friends.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. In fact, I know that we feel like COVID is a dark cloud hanging over us, but with every challenge, there's opportunity. And this is the perfect time.
Yes.
You have the perfect excuse to change. And it's healthy to recognize that I'm not feeling 100%, or I'm anxious and I feel kind of lost. I feel like I'm alone. It's healthy to reach out and ask for help. And one of the things that we've all offered tonight are a suite of assessments that help you to measure how emotionally intelligent you are, or how socially aware you are, or the strengths finders. There's so many different activities that we could lead you through and to help you to define a goal. When you say, okay, my life feels out of balance, what do you want to do about it? These are some of the options. What are you willing to do? And we are here to partner with you, to walk beside you and say, you know what, you can do this. I believe in you. If it's a situation with work and you're having to juggle profit over people, remember, your most valuable asset is your people. You spend 70% of your budget. The Bible tells us that money is filthy lucre, and to seek first the kingdom of God. And God also tells us that what he expects is for us to act justly. He expects us to show mercy, and he expects us to be humble. When we are humble, then that demonstrates a characteristic of vulnerability. Vulnerability speaks volumes to those who are following you. When you are vulnerable enough to really articulate how you're feeling, that opens up a door of trust, because that person feels like, wow, you trusted me with the intimate part of you. So then I can reciprocate. I can trust you. Trust is the foundation of every relationship. So if you're asking, is it too late for change? No, this is the perfect time, perfect opportunity.
I think also you mentioned burnout. It's important to understand, what's the root cause of the burnout? Why are you burning out? And that's where that emotional self-awareness comes in. The other thing to think about is, I think it's in Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But he talks about sharpening the saw and how we can just chop away at the tree, And if we're chopping away at the tree with a dull axe, we're going to chop, and we're going to burn out and never knock the tree down, right? So I think part of when you really focus on sharpening that saw, and most of the research talks about, and they call this wellness or subjective well-being, really around our spiritual lives, our mental health, our emotional health, our relational health, as well as our physical. And there are things that we can do in each of those, and it may be different for each of us, whether it's spiritual, depending on your belief system, your values, connecting more, whether it's connecting more with your purpose. If it's mental, having more of a focus and a presence, maybe doing something like meditation or breathing exercises, learning and teaching. Mental also, Kelly mentioned, strengths, right? So being able to work or to recognize your strengths, being able to work in your strengths, particularly in the first thing in the morning. I know for me, for my Clifton Strengths Finder, I'm strategic, and I'm also very, what they call ideation or ideate. So I'm very creative. So for me to be able to write in the morning is like a mental lift for me. So it's really about finding what is burning you out, finding what spiritually, what mentally, what emotionally, and that's where the emotional intelligence comes in, and what relationally and physically you may need to do to improve your subjective well-being or lift your spirits away from that burnout.
Exactly.
And when you're
holistically-
not working in your strengths, if you're showing up to your job, whether that's in your home office, whether that's sometimes in a closet, we know that, people are working, in different areas of their home. If you're still not showing up, working in your strengths, by golly, you need to take a look at where your strengths lie and start working in that. And it just takes simple adjustments. But again, it goes back to having a coach to help you unpack, who are you? Like Dr. Wallace said, we need to ask that question. And then who are we bringing? So if I'm showing up to work and I'm dreading going to work, I'm not working in my strengths. Research tells us that when you're working in your strengths, you're going to have joy about going to work. You're going to be happy. You are going to feel productive, and you're going to be engaged. So we don't want leaders showing up to work disengaged. It's not good for your people. It's not good for your organization.
There's also a concept, Dr. Whelan, called leadership energy. And the underlying strategy is really common sense and it's practical. Just rest. When we find ourselves in a place of being burnt out, we have to acknowledge that. We have to listen to our bodies, we have to listen to our spirits, and we just rest. And as we rest, then we're able to re-energize. And when we are re-energized, then we can refocus.
Yeah, that Jesus did.
Mm-hmm. And
Exactly.
I think one of the things that this fits into is this place of discovery and exploration. And this is what a coach can really help you do. And you're looking at how that can happen. It's through that process of coaching and through that relationship that you discover and you explore. Just as we've been talking about, if you're not feeling that you're bringing your best, and let's face it, a lot of leaders were surprised. Everybody was surprised, right, with the COVID-19. And so getting back on that track and not letting that surprise continue to derail you. So a question that's out there is, who needs a coach? Who needs a coach?
Everyone needs a coach.
Who doesn't need a coach?
I have a coach. Coaches have coaches. So if a coach has a
Exactly.
coach, why wouldn't somebody who's not a coach need a coach, right?
Exactly.
I want to walk in my strengths. I want to be able to produce for my clients. I want to show up well for them. I want to show up well for my family. And so if I am feeling so oppressed and burdened by everything that COVID has thrown at all of us, there is not a person who is not affected. As we know, even our children, my grandchildren, have been affected by COVID. So how are we being coached so we can position ourselves so we can come out on the other side knowing that we did our best through this. Yes, it was difficult. Yes, it was kind of messy, but we're able to come out on the other side and look at, like Dr. Wallace said, those opportunities that we're reframing things. So they're opportunities, not just, it's just dread, but these are opportunities for us to learn and grow for ourselves as well as for the people that we serve.
Exactly. And keeping in mind that as people, we were created for relationship. We are relational beings. We thrive on it. We need it. We need that connection. And that's why it's important that we have meaningful relationships, relationships that are characterized by trust, by mutual respect, that we demonstrate compassion and self-care. You may ask yourself, what do emotions have to do with leadership? Absolutely everything. Because while we would like to think that we make decisions based off of logic and reasoning are influenced by emotion.
Yeah. I'd also like to add that, you know, anybody can kind of hang a shingle and say they're a coach. You need to be really careful about who you're going to engage with as a coach. You want to make sure that they have had, you know, suitable training, that especially, you know, at the doctoral level, we have assessments that we give, you know, and so you really want to make that fit right, because you're going to have a successful engagement if there's trust built, if you can come into those sessions and you can just be your authentic self and talk about what's on your mind. This isn't therapy. This is really positioning you forward. But if the fit is right with your coach-client relationship, you're going to have a successful outcome.
Exactly. And what Dr. Whelan is suggesting is that you want to make sure that you select a coach that is competent, because a competent coach will fill you with a sense of confidence.
Dr. Perdue, advice from you on selecting a coach?
I would say, again, as I mentioned earlier, from a perspective of what is coaching, and it starts with that relationship. So I think you have to have, just like a friend, you have to have a level of comfort with that person in order for that vulnerability to happen. It's almost like a dance. You know, if you can be vulnerable and earn the trust of someone by exposing yourself, and clients expose themselves to me as a coach, clients expose themselves to coaches. So having that level of comfort and that ability to build that relationship, I think is extremely important. And then I would also say, depending on the area, and this is where I would say, if you're looking for a coach, do a little bit of homework on the area where you want to improve. I tend to look at things through two lenses, pain or gain. So if you're like, okay, I think I'm really good. I'm good right now, but I want to improve to become my best self in these one or two areas. Find a coach that focuses on that, whether it's finding your purpose or whether it's becoming your best self, or if you're challenged in an area, there may be a coach that's focused in, you know, maybe you do lack empathy. You're very assertive and you lack empathy. So people think you're a bull in the china shop. Right. And what that tells us is that there's an imbalance in our emotional intelligence that may need to be put in line. And so someone that has an expertise in emotional intelligence could help. If it's something you're looking at to develop more strategic thinking or more balance around competencies and strengths finder, as Dr. Whelan mentioned, maybe you're looking for someone with a strengths finder background. So I think it's that alignment, being able to find someone you trust and then to address your pain or gain can help.
Exactly. If there are personal issues and personal development that you're interested in, then you may want to research for life coaches. If there are business issues, strategic planning, organizational goals, then you want to look for a business coach. If it's professional development, that's a combination of personal development as well as professional development. So you really want to look for an executive coach. And as far as the qualifications of competent coaches, you want someone who has been coaching for a minimum of 4 years, someone who has multiple certifications. I may get in trouble with this, but you don't really want somebody who has gone through a coaching program for 3 days and they say, okay, I am a coach.
No trouble here.
It's just like when you go to the doctor, when you walk into that doctor's office, you don't want your doctor's grades posted on the wall, and the doctor made D's all the way through medical school. So you want to make sure that you are entrusting your mind, your body, your spirit, your future to someone who's qualified.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I was also going to say, and that also, because I work with teams, and so that also we can look at, okay, a team coach. Is a team coach different than somebody who sees individual leaders? And the answer is yes, because team coaching does have a different flavor to it. And so there's typically more than one coach that you're going to be working with. And a team coach is really aligning themselves with the team leader. And we are really focusing on that team leader ending up coaching their team. And so we work with the leader of the team. We're also working with the team. We're also doing a lot of facilitation. There may be mediation during that. So there's a little bit of a different flavor depending on what your need is.
Exactly. And we're not saying that a coach is a cure-all. An authentic coach, one with integrity, will listen to what you're saying in the conversation, and they will listen for what you're not saying. And then they will identify within themselves if they have the right skill set and the competencies to best address your situation. And if not, then a coach of integrity will refer you to someone else. Because remember, coaching is not about us. It's all about you.
Yes.
Yeah. We've got a couple questions here I want to try to get to if we can. I think we've talked about maybe one or two, but let's go into this area. It may seem like we're jumping from one place to another, but I want to hit the questions that folks have put in. So one of the things we were talking about is those negative feelings. I think Dr. Perdue specifically was talking about those negative feelings as a leader and its impact on the team. Where's the balance between being authentic and letting your team know you're human and prone to the same frustrations without adding to the circumstance?
Yeah, so I'll address that in a couple of ways. The first is, I do think when you say being real, I do think that comes across, or it comes across as authentic. So the first thing you do want to do is be real. You want to be your authentic self. You want to show up who you are, your core values. And one of the things I have my clients do is what's called a user manual. And that user manual creates a purpose, a vision of their values, any assessments they've taken like MBTI or 16 personalities or anything like that, along with strengths. So letting your people know exactly who you are, that is the first thing. But what I will say is you want to be able to balance that with a level of optimism, what I'll call a level of healthy optimism, which is also a subscale of emotional intelligence. So yes, be real, be who you are, but it's important that you espouse growth values of optimism so that your people have something to look forward to. So even if it's bad news today, they always have something to look forward to, a vision. You know, Proverbs talks about, with no vision, the people perish, right? So you want to be able to establish a positive, a hopeful vision of the future for the folks that you lead while being real in the moment and clarify what's going on.
Very good. I also use a tool called GSAT. And in balancing authenticity with vulnerability as the leader, you really want to make sure that you have dealt with your issues and your emotional state and came to terms with them so that you can package them in a positive way. It's okay to identify problems, but you always want to leave your team, your family, and even yourself. You also want to leave people with a sense of hope.
Yeah. And I think that especially during these times is needed. Your people need to hear you. They need to hear that optimism, like Dr. Perdue was saying, because it's not positivity. It's not everything's great. You know, it is, having that healthy optimism where we can say that, yeah, this is messy right now, but we're going to get through it. And this is how. And so I think that when people are showing up in their authentic self, I think it's super important. So who, those values, and then what is your measuring stick? So for the Christian, it's like, okay, well, are we aligning ourselves with Christian values? And so then bringing your authentic self is kind of a no-brainer, right? And this is how we want to be showing up with those values. If we're showing up as our authentic self as a chaotic leader who is just in a state of chaos and frantic during this time, you need to really take a look at that and say, okay, well, how can I partner with a coach? And a coach can maybe role play with me. So we can maybe not have these conversations with the team where we can bring that optimism. If I'm feeling really negative, that's not the energy that your team is needing right now. They need to have you as a leader. You are in that role for a reason.
Exactly, because you want to remember that negativity breeds toxicity, and toxicity dysfunction. So the last thing that you want to do is to open up the door for dysfunction within the team in this situation when we're all trying to pull together and to make the best of a situation and to shift the direction that we're going into so that we end up with positive outcomes.
I think it's important also to touch on with all the emotions that are going on right now, it may be that you don't need a coach. It may be that you need to step into therapy, and that's okay. I think it's always okay for you to say, I need help. And if you were to come to a coach and you were to exhibit, let's just say depression, because a lot of people are experiencing that right now, high anxiety, different things like that. A coach who is a good coach, a good solid coach, will direct you, will ask you if you have thought about maybe seeing a different helps profession, because that is okay. We want healthy leaders leading our organization, leading our teams, leading our families. And so it's okay to say, I need help, regardless of what that is. I think it takes courage to do that. And you have permission to have that courage to reach out.
Have you found that you're using maybe different questions or different approaches with your clients during COVID-19, or maybe a better way to even ask that, is what is necessary in terms of even just talking to our clients, asking our clients, are there different questions that are going to be useful in helping them to address what they're experiencing right now and overcoming the obstacles?
So for me,
it's, well, for Dr. Perdue, he's going to tell you now.
Thanks, Dr. Whelan.
You're welcome.
So if we all take a step back to January, when we started getting the warning signs, and for some it was November of 2019, right? Of here comes COVID, and it's starting to come. Then February hits, March, it's full kind of blown, and then there's like, okay, it's going away. Now there's going to be the second wave. So what I've found in coaching is that a lot of the questions that I've had to ask have been both foundational to create awareness, but also very particular to the time of the COVID cycle. So when it was first starting out, that anxiety and anxiousness about what's coming, what is this, and how do I have to, prepare for it? So what are you going to do as a leader to prepare your people for the changes that are starting to take place? What are you going to do as a leader right now as you are in the midst of COVID, having to change technologies, having to get used to people working at home, having to encourage your people to come back to work in some cases where they just refuse to come to the office if it's a job that needs it. And now that we're kind of coming to some degree on this side of it, on the backside, now it's about resilience and about strengthening and returning back to normal as much as possible, even in the midst of all these challenges that we still have. So the questions have started to evolve a bit in the COVID cycle, but specifically still create self-awareness so that then that leader can be the best leader that they can be by focusing on the area that they, again, going back to that pain or gain either that goal or that challenge that they have. So that's been my experience.
And I've been finding deeper check-ins, spending more time on the front end with really deep check-ins and seeing how they are doing. Because it's important for me to make that connection, not just step right into the coaching, bringing up that empathy that I need to, and really, have them express to me what's going on in their life, because life is different. The clients that I see, their lives have been turned upside down. And so it's important for me as a coach to be showing up for them, fully present in whatever it is that they need me to be in that moment.
Exactly. I find myself encouraging a lot more at this time, but also because we are in a more of a distributed network with people working from home, and you don't have the luxury of communicating with someone face to face or being in their presence. I'm just challenging leaders to talk more to their teams, to involve them more in the decision making, to check in with their teams, to see how each individual is doing. How are you feeling? At this point in our culture and society, it can't just be business as usual. It can't just be about getting the work done, but how we can collaborate, how we can support one another going forward to get the work done. So increasing the communication and the quality of your communication.
And Dr. Wiater, you mentioned earlier that, coaching in some respect was birthed out of positive psychology, right? So positive psychology was really focused on helping someone to get from, 0, if you will, to a positive 10, and not 0 coming from a negative 10, which used to be called negative psychology, or is referred to as negative psychology. And right now, wellness has become a much bigger topic as well in coaching. So as I talk to clients and we talk through different things around this, again, the spiritual, the mental, the emotional, mental state of mind, and things that they can do, to improve their wellness, to improve their subjective well-being, so that they can, get away from that 0, 1, and 2 and start to flourish around 10. So I would say questions and even conversations directed around wellness, leveraging techniques and positive psychology has become a lot more commonplace as well.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that one of the things I found, a couple of things I found are, one, really helping the client to have some courage, things that they could maybe put off for a while as an obstacle that was on the side, all of a sudden became an obstacle in the front. And so really kind of bringing that courage to them, supporting them in that, to help them address those obstacles that were a surprise. I think that's a benefit, that the coach brings. Another piece of that, and we've talked about this, is just really assisting them with those priorities, helping them to really make those decisions on what is the most important thing that I have to take care of now. And that really has changed in a lot of regards for clients. Again, you might have been midstream with somebody on a particular action plan that they were working on. And when something has come up, it really has come up, and just really giving them that courage to address it, that confidence to address it, and the support that they need in that process. Let's see, I had another question I wanted to see. I'm going to ask Dr. Gomez if she has any questions as I ask this one. Where do we see the trends for coaching in the next 5 to 10 years?
They're going. We need good, solid coaches to be taking care of our people. And so, coaching, typically, within organizations, there's internal coaches, but there's also a benefit to having an external coach. And so, the trend for especially executive leaders is having an external coach, because we know that for executives especially, we don't go down with our stuff. And so, when we need somebody to really come and partner with us, having an internal coach isn't always beneficial to them.
One of the trends that I think that we'll see more of is, as Dr. Whelan stated, we see executive leaders more utilizing coaches, but I think that the trend is moving toward allowances for middle managers to be engaged with coaches, because they are the ones who are on the front line, and not allowing them to build those competencies and to have access to a coach widens the gap between the executive leader and the workforce.
I would agree with that. And I would also say that I think there's going to be more of a convergence between your historical leadership coaching or coaching and wellness coaching. So what you're starting to see are some of these companies like Modern Health and others offering wellness coaches to senior leaders, because there's these terms, right? FUDs, right? Fear, uncertainties, and doubts, and VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, challenges, and ambiguity. And if you're like me, I'm very optimistic, but I'm also very realistic in that the world is becoming more complex. And I don't think we're going back to the good old days where it was, motherhood and apple pie. Things are becoming more and more challenging, as well as the baby boomer generation is retiring. And so what that means is, and our workforce is changing, and it's getting younger and it's getting younger and getting younger. So there's a lot more younger leaders emerging, which will need a lot more coaching and being able to deal with some of the challenges, that confidence and that courage that you talked about, Dr. Wiater, as well. So I think there's going to be a conversion of that. And the next thing I'll say is creating a culture of coaching within the organization. So Dr. Wallace, you mentioned that, there's going to be some of the middle managers, and I've seen that trend start, and I agree with you 100%. I also think that these executives and leaders are going to start becoming more coaches themselves. So they're going to start learning on the job to be a better coach to not just their peers, exactly, but also the people that they lead, because the bureaucratic top down, father knows best, let me tell you what you're going to do, leadership days are gone as well. So right now we need to have emerging leaders as coaches so that they can be more encouraging and more confidence building going forward.
I think it's important also to say that with that, coaching and allowing our people to learn techniques, it doesn't mean that they are going to be a professional coach. It means that they will learn some techniques so they can have those conversations and draw out of their people.
I think I'll just quickly add that one of the things that I see as a trend in coaching profession is coaching firms, much the same way that you've really got some legal firms, consulting firms, accounting firms. We're going to see a real upswing in coaching firms to be able to offer the multiple services that are needed to organizations and individuals. Dr. Gomez, you have
Wonderful. Well, I don't know how much time we have left, but there were lots of question panelists coming in, and I know you've already addressed some of them, so thank you so much. One question that I think is really, really important, and I would like your feedback on that, and maybe Dr. Wiater, I know you mentioned that you would share the panelists' contact information or their website, so maybe you can do that while I'm gonna work with the panel here on that question. So one of our participants asked about, COVID-19, major disruption, but what would you recommend to a leader right now? How can they, we can't, as you said, Dr. Wallace, we can't connect with our people face to face in the office, right? Everything has changed. The majority of our organizations have become remote workplaces. So what are some of the tools that you recommend to connect with people in a meaningful way, either as teams or one-on-one? I mean, what are some of the tips you would give us as we are in the trenches of this right now?
These face-to-faces.
Let's start with Dr. Wallace, then Dr. Whelan, and then Dr. Perdue, okay?
One of the things as leaders we can do is to make sure that we have weekly huddles with our teams, connecting with them, where we take care of the business side of the business. And then also maybe monthly or every 2 weeks, just have a happy hour, a fun time where we are just connecting with one another and talking about the things that we're doing to stay healthy, or exercise challenges. It's really, really important at this time to simply stay connected and to reinforce the resounding declarations that I care. Employees need to know that you care, but they need to see and feel what care looks like.
Right. Dr. Whelan?
Yeah, so face-to-faces are great. And I know that a lot of people are meeting with their teams a lot on face-to-face, but how about just inviting a one-on-one face-to-face? And then what I'd also like to encourage is, how about writing a note, an old-fashioned note? I received one last week, and I tell you, that just boosted me. It was like, oh my, somebody actually took the time to write me a note, and how special that was. So imagine if you, as a leader, were just writing a note, handwritten, pop it in the mail to your people, and just have that connection. Not an email, a handwritten, yes, old-fashioned note that could help.
I love it. I love it. I gave a training about 2 weeks ago to a group of school administrators. And one of the things that came up and that I suggested was that to create communities of grace. Grace right now is so important, because if you think about it, it might be the crying baby. In my house, I have a lab pit bull mix. And so when I'm, sometimes in the office and upstairs, I hear these little doggy feet tapping and things. So we've got to practice grace with one another, because given that we're working remotely, given that people are working with their families, and Dr. Whelan, you mentioned the anxiety and depression levels. Yes, there are studies that have shown that those things have gone up by as much as 30% since January. Yeah. So practice grace. The other thing I would say is practice giving kudos. So public rewards, public praise of even the little things that someone might do. I love the handwritten note. Maybe that you can do that, but also in the moment on conference calls, just be a pouring out of that agape love, of that grace that you're giving to those that are doing a good job, and making room for their challenges by working from home.
Well, another thing we can do as leaders is simply say thank you.
Yeah. Simply say thank you, right? Well, those are some wonderful. I took many notes. Dr. Wiater, thank you so much. I know sadly we do have to bring this time to an end. I know we could be here for hours, but we promised you all about a 1 hour webinar. We're already beyond that, which is totally understandable because it's just such a rich topic. We will try to get to everybody's questions offline. You also have the contact information of all the panelists. So thank you so much for making yourself available to that degree to our audience. That is just tremendous. This webinar also has been recorded. So we will send it out once the recording is done. We will also post it on our website, so you will not have missed anything. You'll be able to get in touch with everybody and continue the conversations. I just want to give everybody the opportunities to say their final passion when it comes to the topic, and then I'm going to close us out in prayer. So let's go this way. Dr. Wallace, Dr. Perdue, Dr. Whelan, and then Dr. Wiater, and then I'm going to close us in prayer, okay? So your passion, what you want our audience to take away from tonight.
As leaders, it's vitally important to define the legacy you want to be remembered for. How will you leave your mark? How will your presence, your values, your perspectives, the decisions you make impact your team, your organization, communities, and society long term? So this really leads me to the other L word besides leadership, which is love. When you do what you do because you love doing it, the focus is on you. But when you do what you do because you love the people that you are serving, then it becomes about them.
Well said, Dr. Wallace. I'm a believer that we all are born with a purpose, a God-given purpose, that he knows the plans for our lives, like it says in Jeremiah 29:11, and that it is up to us to find that purpose. And as a leader, to me, the most exciting thing is when you are walking in your purpose and when you are exercising leadership skills, whether they be horizontal skills or vertical skills, strengths from Strengths Finder, emotional intelligence, what have you. But when you bring those two things together, to me, that's when the magic happens. And I would just, say to you all that whether you get a coach or not, always try to lead with your purpose. My purpose is to actually help leaders to find their purpose and to be the best leaders of themselves, their families, their communities, and their places of work. And I believe that God gave me that purpose. And so when you have that, nothing can stop you. So when you talk about resilience, you talk about, bouncing back. That is that's like the tip of the spear, the purpose that you have. So lead with purpose, stay encouraged, and be blessed.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say that everybody on this call knows that this is a difficult time. We know we've all been impacted by COVID-19. We know that it's not going away right now. We know that you, based on what the Bible tells us, you were created, you are masterfully crafted to lead with confidence. And so if that takes reaching out to a coach and being able to really step into that confidence as you lead, please reach out. You don't need to be going through your leadership alone when you have partners that are willing to walk with you.
And I would say this, coaching is a trusted partnership between the client and the coach. And when you look at the fact that, just as Dr. Whelan was saying, others, that we are uniquely created by God. And that's where the heart of coaching begins. It begins with really looking at the fact that each one is uniquely created, that we are trying to draw out the best of who you are through the coaching and through that process. It's nurturing, it's questions, it's a lot of different components, but it really is for the client, that heart of coaching that we've talked about so much. Without that heart for the other, that coaching really doesn't work, so to speak. It can't be valued because it's not authentic, and then the client will definitely lose that trust. So that trust and that relationship and that uniquely being created as an individual are core to the coaching process.
Wow. Well, thank you. Panelists, thank you. What a rich time you have provided us. Thank you so much for giving of your time, your talent, your heart. I felt it. It was truly an amazing time. To the audience, to the participants, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for your questions, for your enthusiasm. We are here for you. Just reach out to us. We are here for you. So let me close in a word of prayer. Well, Father, we thank you. Father, we know that you are above all leaders. Father, you are the King of Kings. And Father, we entrust our lives to you. So Father, I thank you for this time. Father, I thank you for the knowledge and the advice and the heart shared, Father, with those listening. Father, I pray that it will take root in our souls, in our work as leaders. Father, may you equip us to be all that we need to be for those that you've entrusted to our care. And Father, may we truly, in all humility, consider one another higher than ourselves. Father, may we always look out for the best in the other and for the other. So Father, I pray that you pour out your spirit of love and nurture and care on us. And Father, I truly pray that we will lead through this season of COVID-19 and beyond. Father, we are bombarded by many, many different issues. Father, COVID-19 is not the only care and concern we have. And so, Father, we entrust ourselves to you, and we know that you will be faithful to all of us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen and
Amen.
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 Thank you all so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Good night. Goodbye.
Good night.
We'll see each
Good
other
night.
again. Bye-bye,
Thank you.
everybody. Thank
Bye-bye. Thank you,
you.
folks. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been good.
Thank you.
Bye.